And welcome back to Dead Space. Just finished editing and uploading the first video, so we'll see how it does. I enjoyed the heck out of this game. Honestly, one of my favorite games of all time. And we're gonna jump right back into it. See what we can, how far we can get, and continue talking about infection. If you remember last time, we covered what infection is and what causes it, as well as some of the types of infection. And now I plan to go a little more in depth into the types of infection that we have today. As far as educating you a little bit more on the specifics. So, for example, viral infection is what we will start with. A viral infection is sort of self-explanatory in the fact that it is caused by a virus. Now, a virus is a non-living organism that self-replicates on a cellular level. Now, viral infections are well known pretty much around the world. You know, as long as there have been people to get infected, there have been viral infections. You know, HIV, flu, even warts are a form of viral infection. So viral infections are pretty well far. They also encompass more serious diseases like smallpox and Ebola.
Isaac, I've
Viruses
to the deck security
work
system.
sort of like,
it took some work, but I've got
I had
the
to
door
make
to the
an
maintenance bay
analogy to
unlocked.
something, probably
the data board should be somewhere
like
inside.
a hijacker or an unwanted passenger. You know, they invade normal living tissues and use those cells. I should say cells instead of tissues, but they invade normal living cells and use those cells to multiply and reproduce viruses. Reproduce almost identical clones to them. Now, viruses work through asexual reproduction, which means that one virus can turn into 2 viruses, and then 4 viruses, and then 8 viruses. And when there are enough viruses built up within this cell and they've consumed everything in the cell, then they burst out of the cell walls and flood into the body, where they find more cells, enter through those, and start the process all over again. As a result, viral infections spread very quickly, probably faster than any other kind of infection. Whereas I would say the most common type of infection would actually be bacterial, which is what we're going to segue into next. I get so caught up in talking that I always forget to move. Alrighty, so bacterial infections. Now, bacteria are more akin to a living cell. Bacteria reproduce asexually, but they do so with all of the things. It looks like the door to the storage room is locked.
There should be a key somewhere in the maintenance bay.
I need to press the elevator. That would help. So, alrighty. Where was I? Bacteria. Let's see. Okay. Anybody else want to come tango? Nice. Alright. So, where was I? Bacteria. That's right. So, bacteria, like I said, are single-celled organisms, but they reproduce more like a living organism. We consider bacteria to be living creatures, and as such, their reproduction system takes a little bit longer than a virus. Not by much, but still a little bit longer. Now, bacteria come in different shapes and sizes. There's like hundreds of thousands of kinds of bacteria, and not all of them are bad. You know, humans live in symbiosis with certain kinds of bacteria. There's bacteria in your stomach, in your intestines, that you would not be able to live without. These bacteria assist us in breaking down food and extracting nutrients. So, not all bacteria are bad, but even a good bacteria, if too much of it gets into your system, can become bad. So, for example, the bacteria naturally in your stomach are kept in check by other bacteria. There's multiple kinds of bacteria in your digestive system. But if you were to take, let's say, an excessive amount of antibiotics, or even just antibiotics in general, and those antibiotics were to kill off the bacteria keeping another bacteria in check. So let's say bacteria 1 and bacteria 2. Bacteria 1 keeps bacteria 2 in check. Bacteria 1 gets wiped out by antibiotics, and bacteria 2 is allowed to run rampant, which can cause an infection or a disease as such. But most bacterial infections are indeed caused by foreign bacteria. Some examples of those would be bacterial meningitis, which is an inflammation and swelling in the meninges, part of your brain. Pneumonia is another fantastic example of a bacterial infection. Pneumonia is a bacterial infection that really used to be a killer. These days, it's not so much in the younger population, but we still get a lot of geriatric and elderly patients who, you know, will get to a very critical position because of pneumonia infections. Especially if left rampant, the pneumonia fluids in the lungs can build up extremely excessively and cause a person to literally drown inside their own body. Pneumonia also has all kinds of nasty fluids that you really don't want to get anywhere near. These like milky green, absolutely disgusting fluids that just cough and spew out of the patient, especially when you're attempting to breathe with the patient. These fluids can actually obstruct the airway. Tuberculosis is probably one of the most infectious diseases in America at the moment. You know, tuberculosis is a constant danger for anybody involved with medicine. You know, that's why for any of you who are involved in or know anyone involved in medicine, you'll know that a TB skin test is usually required once a year. Where is this key card that I am looking for? I know it's been a little while, at least 7 years since I've played this game, but I seem to remember the key card being somewhere around here. Sorry, I tend to be a crazy person. That tends to happen. Oh, I need to go in the elevator. Right. Now don't I feel like I got egg on my face. Food poisoning, like, not all food poisoning is necessarily caused by bacterial infections, but I would say that 90% is caused by bacterial infections. Yeah, a lot of health packs, not a lot of. Alrighty. As opposed to the Fallout series, I think with this series in particular, I'm not going to attempt to read the text logs out loud. Instead, I'll let people decide on their own whether they want to read them or not. Let's see. So, bacterial infections, really to go across the board. Bacterial infections can infect pretty much anywhere. Same with viral infections, can go pretty much anywhere. Fungal infections usually don't make it past the skin, but it's not unheard of. But by the time a fungal infection reaches past where it's supposed to be, or not where it's supposed to be, but like reaches past the skin, it can be extremely difficult to get rid of, and extremely dangerous for the person with the infection. So that's a little more in-depth. Parasites, like I said, are stuff like malaria. A parasital infection, or a parasitic infection, is something that usually we don't have a ton of experience with out in pre-hospital medicine. With the exception of parasites like ringworm or stuff like that. More common parasites you'll see every now once and again, but parasites are much more common and much more of a real concern in other less developed countries. So that's a more in-depth overview of these kinds of infections. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the identifying things. So the thing about infections is, depending on where the infection is, it can cause different kinds of signs and symptoms. Signs being things that can be visibly seen. Like, for example, swelling. You can see swelling, at least on an outer level. Internal swelling is harder to diagnose, but you can do it, usually by palpation, which is applying light pressure to certain areas to see if the patient responds stingently. So like sensitivity to pain, or soreness, or stabbing pain in a particular area can be indicative of swelling. It doesn't always mean that, like everything, medicine involves taking a look at the whole picture. It's not just one thing equals one. And each person reacts to viruses and bacteria a little bit differently. So, and then my cellulitis may not act the same as somebody else's cellulitis. There are things that they have in common. There's enough that we know what cellulitis is. But no two people always interact the same with an infection. So it can be a little bit difficult, but good signs of infection, at least exteriorly, is swelling, inflammation. Inflammation being redness, a fever, stuff like that. Fever in particular can be a good sign, a good indicator of an infection, because your body is trying to cook the whatever it is out of your system. Now, like I said, not everything I say is sort of to be taken with a grain of salt. This is just to educate you a little bit more. It is in no way a way to diagnose yourself. If you're feeling ill, definitely 100% go to a hospital and get checked out. Only a doctor can diagnose a patient, and no two people interact the same. So if you're feeling unwell, absolutely go get yourself checked out by a hospital. This is just more to educate you a little bit more. It is not to be taken in place of actual medical diagnostics. So, as far as pre-hospital care, which is my specialty, dealing with an infection usually depends on what its symptoms are. The most effective way to fight an infection is with some kind of medication that's designed to target the source of it. So antibiotics for bacterial infection, antivirals for viral infection, targeted drugs for a parasitic infection, and fungicide for a fungal infection.
That's it, Isaac. Take the board
Stuff like
back
that.
to
So
control and
our job
computer array.
is
That
to
should get the transfer
try and treat what the infection causes. So if the infection's causing if the infection is causing, swelling and tenderness, then what we can do is we can apply, if it's swelling, we can apply a cold pack to try and reduce the swelling. Same thing with the fever, we can place, a cold pack to try and bring down that fever. But most of the time, with stuff like cellulitis or, more severe infections like meningitis, our job is primarily to get you to the hospital where they can administer more potent drugs to deal with those infections. Come on, give up the goodies. Give up the goodies. Nope, no goodies for me today. Alright. So, not all infections will necessarily be hospital grade. If you've got a cold, that can be taken care of at home, as long as it's not, incredibly severe, which very few colds are. God. I like a little rough foreplay as much as the next guy, but I'm not really into biting. Got some goodies for me? Ah, dang it. Ah, dear. Let's try and make some friends. So we'll go ahead and pop a save here. Stuff you can do at home. Infections, like I said, they will take its toll on your body. Your body will exude use up a lot of energy trying to fight it. So the important thing there is to keep up on fluids and monitor the person with it. You know, are they getting better? Are they getting worse? Are they staying about the same? You know, so keeping up on fluids is important. Keeping up on electrolytes is important. You know, drinking straight water is good. But I've found that, you know, a Gatorade every once in a while when I'm sick really helps cut down on some of that time. Some way to replenish the salt and electrolytes that you're losing through the process of fighting off that infection. You know, most infections, to a degree, will also inhibit an appetite. You know, so it's important to keep eating, not too much, because your digestive system can be easily irritated depending on certain kinds of infections.
All right, we're on board and
so simple stuff, you know, stuff that you can keep down. It all sounds like common sense.
The quarantine
but,
just lifted.
Whatever was in the flight lounge must have left. That's lucky for us.
You know,
Isaac,
a lot
get
of people.
back to the Kellion and prep it for launch. We'll find out what we can from the bridge and meet you there.
If we live that long, you're out of your league, Hammond. This is suicide. We're going to die out
here. Your lack of confidence in me is duly noted, Miss Daniels. But I have a mission to complete, and that's exactly what I am going to do, with or without you. Do we understand each other?
Just get us out of here alive.
As I was saying, you know, you'd be surprised. A lot of people, especially, you know, people who are, for one reason or another, out on their own, or they didn't really get sick as kids. The first time that they come across, you know, an illness that doesn't go away in a couple of days, you know, they freak out. They're not sure how to take care of themselves. You know, so spreading information is an important task, and you know, I hope it helps somebody. So, like I said, if you're sick and you know you feel like you don't want to go to the doctor, you can, you know, if you got a fever, throw an ice pack on your head. Keep up on your fluids. Make sure you eat food at regular intervals and get a lot of sleep. Your body does most of its regenerative process while you're sleeping. You know, the more sleep you get, the faster you'll recover. And with that, I think we are gonna call this a recording for right now. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you guys coming by. Any, you know, if you have any criticism or advice on how I should run the series, if I'm talking too much, too little, stuff like that, feel free to let me know. You know, this is very new to me, and I'm always looking for a way to improve the experience for people. So, as always, I hope that you have a good day.
What can I do to make you think a little longer? You're making